afternoon, everybody, and welcome in. It's Friday. Happy Friday. Hope you guys all had a great and winning week. I'm Andrew, as you know, joined by Jeff Dawson from East Coast Sports Investors. We're going to talk about the massive two-game slate in the NHL today. Some games tomorrow as well. Obviously, super wild card weekend in the NFL. We're just hopping on to chat for a little bit, give out some picks, talk some opinions, and then we will call it a show. But Jeff, how was your week, man?
The week's been great. We started the week off with Michigan plus 200. We got them at the start of the tournament, the Final Four. Had a great week on the pucks, a couple college basketball games in between. So we're having a great week. Short slate tonight in the NHL. We talked backstage. Something smells to me. I don't know if I'll be in or out. Big slate, obviously, tomorrow night. But wild card weekend, weather in Kansas City, weather in Buffalo. So whether or not I'll have any action in either one of those games, who knows?
We will find out. Congratulations on the great week. And college basketball, I love following along with those team totals. And we've got some NHL going. And we always talk about this, and I hope people don't mind us always bringing this up, but I got to give you some credit. I talked about it backstage with you. My record, 14-12, start to 2024 in the NHL, but up 5.3 units. And a lot of that goes to the team totals. You know, last night, Islanders team total plus 140 just to get to 4 goals there. Hey, number was minus 130 to get the job done against the Maple Leafs. And all of a sudden you get that nice plus price. So you got to love that. And you look at these plus price tickets, and also when you win, it's great. But also when you lose, you're not losing nearly as much, not losing the juice. You're just, losing that straight wager there. So I'm happy about it. You're taking care of business with your clients. And I got a few questions to kind of go over and a few things to mention. But first and foremost, I got to ask about your thoughts on this theory that I've been thinking about. And I got to start putting it into place and putting it into action more. But we don't really bet a lot of team total unders. At least I don't. When I look at some of these games, like last night, Winnipeg and Chicago, you've got that Edmonton-Detroit game. Think about some of these lopsided games, right, that are supposed to be dominant, where the team totals, you'd pretty much have to bet over 4.5 to get a good price on it. Are those games worthy of betting unders on because you're really mainly thinking about just one team? Like yesterday, I wanted to play Winnipeg in some way. I had a 1% wager, first period puck line. Wasn't getting much on it, like close to even money. That one falls. The first goal of the game wasn't until the second period. But the entire time I was thinking to myself, I don't think Chicago is going to score many goals. But the under 2.5 is way too juicy. Under 1.5 is all right, but then you're asking them to just score 1 goal, which is, it's the NHL. You score 2 goals, not too hard in that league to do it. And then the full game under, I look at it. My point is, these lopsided games, what do you think about just looking at full game unders or taking those team total unders, whether it's 1.5 or 2.5, instead of trying to make something happen with the favorite? Any thoughts on that?
I love the thought process. I, too, have been thinking of stuff like that. The problem that I see is the majority of the team totals are based on the under. That's why we get the plus money. That's why you got plus 140 on the Islanders. And I have to applaud you, because we talked at length about this for a long time. Why lay the minus 130 when I can get a plus 140? And you got the perfect scenario. I mean, I almost texted you because we were on the Islanders team total on Tuesday and lost. And we talked yesterday. I was like, good for you for coming back to the Islanders. I should have. But my point is, I had a text in hand for you when they scored 40 seconds into the first period. I'm like, oh my God, but I didn't want to mush it. But my point is, you got to 3-3 overtime. So again, overtime, shootouts, it's a flip of the coin. But you weren't laying the 130. So if the Leafs were to have scored, you would have only lost the 1 unit or whatever
Right.
percentage you lost, versus if you had them minus the 130 and the Leafs won 4-3 in overtime, it's 1.3. And my point is, if you do, let's just say 1.3, if you were laying 133 on all your plays, every 3 losses adds up to an extra unit. And a lot
Yes.
of people just want to forget about that. Hey, I had a great week. Oh yeah, what'd you do? Oh, I went 7-3. Hey, applaud that 70%. Yeah, I won 0.8 units. You were 7-3. You were up 4 games. Yeah, I know, but I laid a lot of minus 160s or 170s, So your record it's all about the ROI, and obviously at the end of the day, it's all about your units and increasing them.
Everyone gets asked what's the most important thing to look at when you're looking at a handicap or a sports, but I agree, the ROI, units earned. In moneyline sports, you shouldn't really be asking somebody their percentage, because percentage, they could take all minus 300s and have a great percentage, right? It's the ROI, the units earned, things like that. How about the Edmonton Oilers, the team that was almost near the last place in the conference, near the bottom of the league in general? They send Jack Campbell down, they fire their coach, and all of a sudden they get rolling, beating good teams, beating bad teams. This team is looking really strong, Jeff. And as far as their futures numbers, they have just climbed up and up and up and up. As far as the Oilers are concerned, or just anybody, how are you feeling right now as far as the NHL is concerned?
Well, I talk about not jumping in front of freight trains. We talk about winning streaks and losing streaks, and one of our sources and spreadsheets last night had 7.5 total goals being scored in that game, and I got cute. I have to admit, our one loss yesterday, we went 2-1. I had the Red Wings team total over 3.5. I had them plus 138 or 139, and a game that was supposed to have 7.5 goals, 0-0 after the first period, 0-0 after the second period. And I'm like, gee, great job, Jeff. And then, of course, 2-2, 3-2 Edmonton, who is now, I think, won 7 in a row. I talked about it in August, September. I really think the Oilers are just Allmark away, a Swayman away from really being the team to beat out west. So I love the direction they're going, Andrew.
And I look at these games and I'm just thinking it kind of excites me, because it makes you realize that in the NHL, when a team seems dead, they really aren't, especially when it's like November, December, they're struggling. It's not like they were going through struggles in March or, February or things like that, where it's a little bit too late. I tweeted out earlier in the week, I put in some small futures before the season started, but I just kind of got back in again on LA 15-1. They cost me again last night, but it kind of reminds me of this. Like in the NFL, which we're going to get to, you just have to get to the dance. It doesn't matter who you show up with; it's about what you go home with. I probably shouldn't use that expression, but for the LA Kings, it doesn't matter if they're the 7th, 8th, 6th, 5th, or whatever seed in the Western Conference. They just have to get there. So they've now lost like 8 or 9 straight games, I think it is, which is crazy to think. But I thought there was really good value there on the futures market for the LA Kings. So anybody watching this, like I love that when I tweeted that out yesterday, Jeff, everybody was like, what are you thinking? Like, what's going on? It's like, dude, obviously they're playing bad right now. It's why I was able to get the 15-1. Like, people don't get that, right? Like, I was getting ripped on, like, not with that coach, not with that goalie, not with how they're playing. It's like, well, would you want me to wait until they were on a 9-game winning streak to go ahead and bet their future? It's a little bit late at that point to, once they're on that huge streak. So I wanted to mention that because I haven't done too many videos here on YouTube or Twitter over the past couple of days here. But Kings, I've been liking. Anything in the West or East that you would jump on right now?
Well, again, in our business, it's our job to point out, you always sell high, buy low. So again, when we talked in September before the season started, I was like, buy the Avs now, because I think the only way they're going to go is down. And we talked about the Hurricanes and certain teams. So there's advantageous to get a future or two that you like pre-flop before the season starts, but it's our job to monitor who's hot, who's not. Perfect eyes again on the Kings at 15-1. And I was going to actually ask you, not to digress here, Zegras out for, was it 4 to 6 weeks or 6 to 8
Yeah.
weeks, broken ankle. Number one. Number two, the BC star basically stiff arming the Flyers at the World Cup, and basically they said no, 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 and they shipped them to the Yotes. And again, it makes it sound I wanted to play out west with Zegras, blah blah blah. What was your thoughts on that?
To the Ducks, yeah, no, you're right.
Ducks, Ducks.
Yeah, it's look, I've been asked a couple of times on it, and like my whole thing in general is just like, without having any knowledge about why he did it exactly, my first answer is just play for the team that drafted you. Period. We don't really know what it was. For me, not knowing, and if it's like not that serious of stuff, if it's literally just like him not liking the GM or not liking the coach or whatever, I don't really like that. It's like you got to just go ahead and play. But you know what's funny is that in a sad but weird way, this type of drama and like kind of like prima donna type like NHL players acting like, they're this and that, it's actually good for the league in a weird way. Because what does it draw, Jeff? Headlines, Twitter, blogs, websites, podcasts. We're talking about it right now. But I have to respect the Philadelphia Flyers and all the other owners, because I saw Danny Briere thanking the other GMs and owners about this too. Because imagine if word got out about this, the leverage other teams would have over them, knowing they had a player that refused to play there. They would just have so much leverage, say, we're going to give you a bag of pucks and some Gatorade, and you got to give us Gauthier because he doesn't even want to be there. I actually think that they won the trade. Like, I think that Drysdale is, I think that Philadelphia has some talent up front. They have some guys going through the system. They have Michkov, the Russian kid that will be there in 2 or 3 years. They needed a guy like Drysdale who has NHL games under their belt, might I add. Gauthier hasn't even played his first game yet, and he's requesting a trade. So, I mean, if it's as simple as not liking Danny Briere and not liking what Philadelphia stands for and different things about that, then I don't agree with it. But did you see John Tortorella, what he said? He goes, no. I don't know Cutter Gauthier from a hole in the wall. He said, let's stop talking about him. If he doesn't want to be here, he doesn't have to be here. I'm here to talk about the new guy. I think it's super interesting. You mentioned Zegras really quick. People have been rumoring him to Montreal. At first, I wasn't really interested, but now I kind of am. After what I just watched last night against the Sharks and 2 nights ago, I just think this is a team in Montreal that still is lacking forward talent. And I think that they need, size doesn't even really matter that much in the NHL anymore. For the most part, for your skill players, we need more guys like him. I'd be curious what would happen. Kent Hughes is very familiar with Zegras. Obviously, Zegras and Caulfield played at the U.S. program together in World Juniors. I think it would be cool to have them together. But what were your thoughts on the whole thing?
Well, it was funny because when we were doing the show last night from 6 to 10 with on Sports Map Radio, Anthony Pepe works for BC Hockey, was number 1 in the country, and our other co-host was Mark Linehan, who works for BU Hockey, who was number 2 in hockey. So we got the I'm better than you, blah 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 blah, and it was going back and forth in between commercials, and I'll be in Vegas for the Super Bowl Radio Row. I'll miss the first Monday, but we're working the finals in the Beanpot at the Garden, and unfortunately BC plays BU on the first Monday, so one of those teams will be in the championship. Obviously I'm rooting for BC this year, but the talent that's back at Hockey East, and you're talking about Zegras, and we're talking about BC and BU, and it's only 45 minutes away. So I always tell you, next time you're coming back east in the wintertime, we BC, BU, Northeastern, Harvard, they're all right down the road. So, I mean, you can catch a great game or two.
I'd love to. And there's draft picks for the Canadians all over the place with BC. And I want to see Lane Hudson. I want to see Fowler he plays for BC, I believe, the goaltender. So I'd love to. I'd love to see a college hockey game. And I heard they pack the house. Like, it's a real good environment. So definitely something I want to be a part of and check out. I have some questions to flip to you with the NFL, but really quick, Predators and Stars. I'm seeing minus 175 now for the home team, the Stars, where they've played so well. A couple days off now for the Preds. I believe 2 days or 3 days rest. They're plus 145, total 6.5 here. Taking a look at these numbers for the Dallas Stars. I got to try and pull this up here. 18-4 home over under number for the Dallas Stars. At home, they are scoring goals. They are going over the total. And I've got Wedgwood versus Saros in net tonight. Jeff, it's Freaky Friday. I'm stepping in front of it. I'm taking the under 6.5 here. I'm hoping we can finally see a defensive game. But I will say one thing I really like about the Dallas Stars, which makes me mad when I watch the Canadians and Caulfield. We talked about him for a second. They don't always try and go top corner, perfect shot. They just score goals the right way. Sure, some goals are nice, some goals are fancy, but a lot of times they score dirty goals. They score around the net. They make it happen. I got a few props to mention as well in that game, but I'm looking at the under 6.5. Dallas's defensive metrics have really been hidden under all of their scoring. That 18-4 home over under record, a lot of those are just games that they've won and they've gone over their team total. You and I have spoken about it. Sometimes teams like them hit their team total, but the full game goes under. So what do you think about these two teams right now? As I've mentioned to you before, Nashville's my kryptonite. They're kind of like what you mentioned with the Leafs. So I don't really like picking sides in their games.
I'm smiling because, when something smells, it smells. And to me, my numbers, my metrics, all my sources, you said they were minus 175. I don't like Nashville, obviously, a couple of days off. But Dallas has been so good to us. And it's like Vancouver, the Flames. You do a team total last night, you don't even have to watch after the first period. I mean, there's some teams catching fire. My point is, they're offering me Dallas team total over 3.5 minus 109. I'm like, how do I not take it? And we're having a great weekend. It's not a great board. And it's one of these, hey, you know what? I'm just going to set it and forget it. We're going to release that play and we're going to get ready for Saturday. But I can't even keep a straight face because, Andrew, I'm probably going to be texting you at the start of the third and it's going to be Nashville 2-0 or 2-1. I'm like, I should have followed you. So how about you go under 6.5 and the final score is 4-0 or 5-1? How's that?
That's completely fine with me. That's completely fine with me. And that would almost make the point even better. We'll have to clip this up and take a look at it because, this team, again, has been good defensively. Last 5 weeks, they're the number 2 team in expected goals allowed. So their defensive numbers aren't really being displayed because they're playing so well offensively. And certain teams like that, it kind of just doesn't really show because, they don't get the credit because they've been scoring. So Dallas, another team that has some younger players, but also a lot of vets. They'll be looking to make a splash the trade deadline, I can only imagine, to make a little playoff push there. Let's take a look at some player props I was looking at for this one. I did return a little bit to the shots on goals. And one of the ones I was looking at was Matt Duchene, center for the Dallas Stars. He's gone over 2.5, under 2.5 in 8 of his last 10 games. So, he's someone that's kind of been like a shutdown guy, more so been kind of a defender out there for the PK and things. Still a talented player, but the thing is, I like using the expression, a lot of cooks in the kitchen. When you see a lot of good teams, doesn't mean every player goes over their shot count. Actually, it could be the opposite because there's so many great players. They aren't all going to get their shot counts. So that one to me was worth it. And then the guy I talk about pretty much every time I talk about the Stars is Rupe Hintz. I'm looking at him to get a power play point. You can get a real nice plus 160 price on that. His shot prop over 2.5. It's hitting about 60% last 10 or 15 games, but it's at minus 110 to go over 2.5. And you and I talk about laying juice and avoiding that stuff, especially with the prop market. That's where you can really get you. If you go 1 and 2, it's a lot worse than a regular 1 and 2 day if you're laying 140 on some of these props. So definitely worth it. And looking at the next game here, we've got the Flyers and the Wild. Close to a pick in this one. Total's at 6. One thing I'll say about this one is that right away the road team intrigued me because I watched their game against the Habs, and as interesting it was to watch that game, I truly believe that the Philadelphia Flyers should have had like 5 goals on the Habs or 6 goals. It's one of those games where when a team plays so well and they dominate and they run into a hot goaltender, usually the next day I try and back them again or look at them a little bit. So I'm kind of interested in the road team in that one there with Philly. But what are your thoughts on Wild and Flyers?
You know, we talked on Tuesday about the Wild, about the injuries. The change at the helm has kind of, lost its luster. And it was funny. I want to say a week, 10 days ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, I was going through the standings and I was like, holy moly, where did this come from? I'm talking about the Flyers and they've been playing a lot better. And I'll just say this to you because I consider you the hockey expert. Knowing what's going on, knowing how both teams have played the last 2 to 3 weeks, aren't they almost trying to entice us to take the Flyers tonight?
Potentially. I could agree with that. You look at Minnesota. The thing is, I'm always interested in it. Maybe it's a bad thing. As you know, I probably step in front of teams when they're not playing well more often than I should. Minnesota hasn't looked good in a large scale. So who are we to say tonight's going to be the night they get it going? That's my argument. Who are we to say tonight's the night that Minnesota gets it going? I saw a plus 160 price tag on Philadelphia to get to 4. That was really intriguing to me for a team in Minnesota that gave up 7 goals to Dallas, 4 goals to Dallas. They're giving up all kinds of shots. And Marc-Andre Fleury, because Gustafson's been out, he's been playing every game. We know he's getting older. Father Time's been hurting Marc-Andre Fleury. So, and this is one of those examples where people would say to me and you, well, aren't you getting a bit greedy? It's a pick'em game here. Why are you taking the team total? Well, I think if I'm going to get involved with this game, I want more than a pick. You know what I mean? I want that plus price. I think that one team does get to 4. I think that you've heard me call Fridays Freaky Friday in the NHL multiple times. The game that everyone thinks is going to go over is the Dallas game. The game people will bet the unders is the Minnesota game. And I bet you tonight it's the opposite. Over game will be the Wild game and the under game will be the Stars game. It's how it always goes on Fridays.
That's like when you used to we used to for a while get a Washington Capitals home game, which always was like watching paint dry. First 1 to 3 wins, and then of course you'd get a Devils road game or even Devils home game where the under over 7 and a hook, and we're staring at 1-0 start of the third. So getting back to the Flyers, my point I guess is I'd respect the Flyers more at minus 125, minus 130 versus that pick 'em like, oh, okay, I can get the Flyers at a pick 'em tonight. And the Wild was good to us for a while, and then we backed off of them. It's going to be a pass for me. I'm going to root hard for you if you dive in there, obviously. But something smells fishy, and it's probably the Dallas Stars tonight, team total. That's probably the fishy one.
Well, speaking of fishy and speaking of kind of, I guess I don't want to say popular things and plays and looking at certain things, I want to talk about weather in the NFL. That's been the big talk of the town and the handicapping community and the betting community. I've heard so many different funny opinions. I've heard some people say they've got warmers on the sideline. The field's warm. The players are wearing jackets. Well, those people don't understand what below zero means or where I live, minus like 35 degrees. People don't realize how cold that is. You could wear the warmest jacket in the world. When you take that off and go onto the field, you are cold. But the big question is, the books know it. We know it. The points are adjusted. The props are adjusted. Totals are adjusted. When you look at those games like Pitt and Buffalo, like the Miami Dolphins and Kansas City Chiefs, Ralph Michaels was talking about earlier how during the regular season in the NFL, the highest totals usually go over, the lowest totals go under. Apparently, according to him, when it comes to the playoffs, that flips. The lowest totals actually tend to go over and the highest ones tend to go under. What are your thoughts on the whole weather as a whole? Do you believe people overreact to it?
100%. 100%. But looking at this board, Pittsburgh Buffalo, which everyone has seen the snapshot on social media, we had a 41-42 on Sunday and Monday. It's 35. It's down to 34 on DraftKings, 33.5 on FanDuel in Pennsylvania right now. And I weather is a concern, wind is a concern. I was part of a couple of years ago Patriots Buffalo Monday night game where the wind was howling 30, 40, 50 miles an hour this way. And I think that was the game the Patriots won, I don't know, 10-3 or something, but they threw the ball 3 times. And you look at a Pittsburgh team that has a two-headed monster with Jalen Warren, with Najee Harris, a quarterback, not Ben Roethlisberger. It's not Terry Bradshaw. It's Mason Rudolph, who was third on that depth chart behind Pickett and Trubisky. They're not going to want to put him in harm's way either. So I could, if I had to play that game, the number was as high as 10. It's down to 9.5. I think Buffalo wins the game, but I can't get in front of that 9.5. But here's the intrigue, Andrew, is tomorrow night at 8:15 in Arrowhead Stadium, Miami, Mr. South Beach, travels to Kansas City. And there is talks of -2, -3 degrees at kickoff with a wind chill of 20, 25, 30 below. There's talks that this could be the coldest game in the history of the NFL. Now, they already played each other in Germany, and the Chiefs got them. My point here is my true number was a 44. At Circa right now, it's 43.5. So there was no 6, 8, 9-point under-over adjustment like in Buffalo. 30 below, 25 below, and they have adjusted it 1/2 of a point. So Vegas is still telling me, Jeffrey Benson and Derek Stevens at Circa is still telling me they think it's 24-20 Kansas City. So that is, everyone on social media or on Twitter's got the under, and I haven't heard one person say they like the Dolphins. So something is fishy, no pun intended, in that Dolphins game.
There certainly is something going on with that one. I think I would be more up to take the over than I would the dog. I went on Wager Talk today on Monday, the show where you go on and don't just talk about plays that day for the rest of the week as well if you can. And I mentioned Chiefs -3.5. I saw even a 5 pop up. We saw 4, then 4.5, 5, 5.5. Is it going to get there? Well, I see 5s right now, multiple books, but one of those things where it's like people that are liking the Dolphins, they're being smart. They're waiting to come in now. They didn't like it at 3.5. They're liking it at 5. But I do agree that to me at 44, look, we're still talking about dangerous players. We're still talking about weapons. We're still talking about 2 talented rosters. It might be cold out, but do these teams, if they're playing in Miami, what's the total? If they're playing at a little bit more health for Miami, what's the total? That's the thing you got to ask yourself. And I think that these are real interesting. And you mentioned, we're talking about the Bills game. I want to mention it again because I really do like Ralph's stuff. And you've mentioned him a couple of times on the show as well. Ralph said that double-digit faves have had a lot of success over the last few years in the NFL wildcard weekend. I find it pretty interesting. We saw 10.5s. Now we're seeing 9s for this Bills game. So that one is interesting. You mentioned Jalen Warren, actually. You popped his name up. One of my favorite props in that game, actually, Warren over 18.5 receiving yards will be a client play for me. Bills giving up more than 40 yards per game in the receiving to opposing running backs. And with that bad temperature, with Rudolph, as you mentioned, the third string for them, playing like the number 1 guy, though, expecting lots of dump offs, lots of dink and dunk action. He's pretty much going to be acting as a running back, but catching the ball, so still racking those yards up as a receiver. So I'm looking towards that. I'm curious your thoughts on the Mr. Inexperience versus Experience, Flacco and Stroud. Do you have any thoughts on that one?
Monday morning, I looked at the numbers. I looked at the brackets, and my NFC sleeper was the Rams, and my AFC sleeper, hands down, was the Browns. They were 2-point favorites at Houston. We've seen what Flacco has done the last few weeks. We know defensive travels. Big win by CJ and company against the Colts last week to get into this playoffs. Line tipped to 2.5, and overnight I saw some buyback on Houston. So I'm leery right now. I really like the Browns in a money line spot. I thought they would win. I thought they could possibly pose fits to Lamar Jackson in Baltimore next week. The return of Joe Flacco to Baltimore, I can see it already. I can see the headlines. Buyer beware on the Browns. Now again, I'm not saying the Browns don't win. And does it square peg round hole land on 1 or 2? I really like the Browns going in on Sunday and Monday. I'm getting a little gun shy right now. Lean Browns, but I'm seeing a lot of sharp action buyback on the Texans.
I'm very curious about that. Like I and I heard Teddy Covers talking about experience, not just with Flacco, obviously, but with the schedule. Cleveland clearly had the tougher schedule this year versus Houston. And what I always say, I was doing a podcast yesterday. What I always say to people too is, which team is more satisfied to be where they are, right? Which team is happier? And, I think it's actually a decent angle, because whether or not you think it in your head, like, that's a lot of times. Think about Tampa Bay. You've mentioned it in the NHL. How many times did they get to the dance before they won their back-to-back cups or went to the cup finals, right? Toronto's been going through it for years now with the Maple Leafs. Colorado went through it. Dallas is going through it right now. Houston, I don't think it's their time. That's the problem. It's like, if they get there, I think everyone's just preying on Joe Flacco's downfall. Like, anybody that I know that likes Houston, they seem like they're just waiting for Joe Flacco to have a bad game. Do you get that vibe too, though?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I mean, we were talking a few minutes ago about Mason Rudolph. Now we're talking about Joe Flacco. and on Monday night, it's Baker Mayfield. I mean, the last handful of weeks, it's been like 60, 70% looking at these quarterbacks, scratching your head. And you're like, where are these guys coming from? And I, firm believer, defense travels. I think that, the Browns have a better defense. Joe's got the experience. And as you said, I think the Texans, D'Amico Ryan, CJ Stroud, are just happy to be there. I was a Brown guy all week, and I just, my eyes aren't deceiving me. Now, if I wake up tomorrow morning, Andrew, and I see that line down to 1.5, I definitely know that the Texans are the right side. I'm hoping, I always say this, on Friday night, Thursday night, actually, the oil money comes in from Texas. So maybe there was a lot of Texans that came in backing the Texans. And then on Friday night, the California gold and oil money comes in. So it'll be interesting to see. Keep your eyes, take a snapshot on the numbers before you go down to sleep tonight of what the board looks like. And then take a look at it in the morning when you wake up. Where is the movement going?
I'm extremely excited. You're right. And it's important for people to do that. I've got a lot of people I know and just friends, just personal life, that wait to bet their tickets a minute before the game starts, and they're betting the worst number every single time. And you got to be careful of that. You got to at least know what the number was. If you're going to do that, know what it was, know what it's turning into. Don't be betting your player props, especially if you're betting overs. Don't be betting them the minute before the game starts. You're going to put yourself in a tough position. But looking across the board, Jeff, we're now running 34 minutes here on a Friday evening, or late afternoon, I guess. We got the Rams, Lions, Eagles, Bucks. I'm sure we'll be talking throughout. My Packers against the Cowboys. We'll find out if they stand a chance, but throw us a bone. Is there a pick you can give for us here as kind of a little pick for the video?
Yeah, I'm going to stick with, I like the story. I like everything about it. I like the Rams plus 3.5 at the Lions. I know a lot of people are going to take the over in that game. I like Stafford coming back to Detroit. I love where Puka is. I love where Cooper Kupp is. I love what Corinne Williams has done the last month. And don't forget, I have Aaron Donald on the other side. Don't know the availability of Sam Laporta. The key to success, A, is win the turnover battle, but B, for the Rams to keep Aiden Hutchinson out of Stafford's way as much as possible. I just think that the Rams get it done. I got them plus 3.5. I sprinkled some beer and pizza money on the money line as well. I just think they're a dangerous team playing with house money. And I go back to August, their under over was 5.5. And I laughed. I'm like, oh, McVay, this is free money. You guys are awful. And now look, they're in the playoffs.
I like it. All right. Looking at the Rams, and, I think that coaching edge, the quarterback coming back, and I think it's a really good spot. Getting points there as well. I'm going to go to the prop betting market for my kind of play of the day here. I guess it'll be a play of the day, but not for actually today. It's for Sunday. And I'm not going side or total in this one with that Packers game. I'm going to go with the prop here. Aaron Jones over 69.5 rushing yards. He's had 3 straight 100-plus rushing yard games. He has done very well. He's been given a ton of carries, and he's probably the freshest player in this entire game between both teams. He dealt with injuries, gone through a tough season. People are talking up Jordan Love and their, the depth they have at the receiving position, despite how young they all are. But even as a fan, I know the biggest thing that will go into this game is the Packers, if they can utilize the clock, keep the ball, heavy time of possession, keep the Dallas Cowboys offense off the field. And for a guy that's had 3 straight 100-yard performances on the ground to get to 70 yards, unless this game is a blowout early and they're down 2 touchdowns, I see the running game being a very important part of the Packers game. So my play, I'm going to go with Aaron Jones over 69.5. We got the Rams plus the points, a prop bet for me. I like it, Jeff, and I'm sure we'll be talking throughout the weekend as well. Maybe we'll even do a little thing on Monday. We'll do a Twitter space or something. I don't know. We got a big game going on. Buccaneers and Eagles. Who would have thought Baker Mayfield would be, just a, point or two underdog in that one. But I'm super excited. I want to throw it back to you to just let people know what you have going on over with you guys at East Coast Sports Investors.
And for your Packers, you would make everyone in New England a lot happier if you could not just go in and cover that game, but to upset the Cowboys. And then there will be talks that maybe Jerry Jones picks up the phone and calls up Bill Belichick and replaces Michael McCarthy, with Bill Belichick. So always honored and blessed to be here with all you great followers. You can go over to our website at eastcoastsportsinvestors.com. Check on pricing. We got what we call as a gym membership, $3 a day, $99 a month. All our plays sent to you via text and emailed, our breakdowns, our thoughts, futures, everything all in once for just $3 a day. It's a way for both of us to get to know each other, as myself and Andrew always preach long term. 1 day, 1 week, 1 month doesn't make a handicapper here. It's all about long-term success, marathon, not a sprint. And I think myself and Andrew do a hell of a job trying to preach and educate that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I love going back and forth, throwing some questions at you. I know I don't always mention beforehand what I'm going to ask you, but I think that's kind of the fun part of it. See your opinions on it, talk the futures, talk about some plays here. So we got the Rams and we've got Aaron Jones over on the rushing prop. Let's cash some tickets, guys. Best of luck. Manage your bankrolls properly and have a good weekend, guys. Take care.